During a tornado, my family deliberately left my wife and son behind because they didn't deserve a seat next to family. I swore I'd never forgive them. 9 months later, I took them to court and I made them pay for every second my 5-year-old spent begging for his life. Hey, Reddit! My family always treated my wife and kid like they were beneath them. I thought moving away and building a life on my own would be the end of it, but I was wrong. They crossed a line I'll never forget. Before I get into how far they went, let me start from the beginning. My name's Elias Clark. Back in 2013, when all this started, I was 35 and working as a software engineer out in Denver. My wife Hazel, who's 32, is a nurse, the kind of person who stays calm when everyone else panics. We have one kid, Leo. He's 5, smart as hell and sensitive. He's the reason I get up every morning and try to do better than the house I grew up in. That house is in Moore, Oklahoma, where I swore I'd never live again. My mom Grace still lives there. She's 62, controlling, manipulative, the kind of woman who will smile while stabbing you with guilt. My older brother Austin never left. He's 38, runs a small auto shop, and never forgave me for going to college. His wife Vanessa is 36, and she's about as subtle as a hammer. They have a daughter, Ava, who's 4 and already treated like she's royalty. This story starts in early May 2013, about 2 weeks before the tornado that would tear everything apart on May 20th. Hazel had been suggesting for a while that we try to patch things up with my family. She wanted Leo to know his grandparents, and I thought maybe we could finally put the old resentment behind us. So we packed up the car and drove the 10 hours from Denver to Moore. The bad vibes started before we even stepped inside. Grace didn't greet us with a hug, just a passive, "You actually showed up," and a look that said she was inspecting us for flaws. Vanessa hugged Hazel like she was doing her a favor. Austin slapped me on the back so hard it felt like a warning. Inside, the house was exactly like I remembered. But what I didn't expect was how many photos I wasn't in. Literally. Grace had cut me out of several pictures. In one, it was just her and Austin smiling with a jagged edge where my head used to be. We hadn't been there an hour before the comments started. Vanessa looked Hazel up and down and said, "Still not much of a cook, huh?" when she offered to help in the kitchen. Austin kept calling me keyboard cowboy and asked how it felt to sit on my butt all day. Grace sighed dramatically over dinner and said, "You left us behind for that city money. Austin's the one who stayed to take care of family." Hazel smiled politely through it all, but I could see in her eyes she was already regretting the trip. Leo clung to her leg most of the time. He's shy around new people, but here it was more than that. He could feel the tension too. It wasn't just the words. It was how they treated Leo. When he didn't finish his beans at lunch, Grace said, "Ava eats everything on her plate. City kids are always picky." Vanessa rolled her eyes and said, "Our daughter already helps fold laundry. What does Leo do?" Later, they handed Ava a $50 princess doll and gave Leo a $2 bag of gas station candy. He looked at me, confused, but didn't say anything. By the second night, I was seriously considering getting a hotel, but Grace guilt-tripped me hard. "If you leave, you'll just prove that you think you're too good for us." Vanessa chimed in with, "Good luck finding a room this week. Graduation season." I checked online. She wasn't lying. Everything nearby was booked. And through all of it, there was one memory I couldn't shake. The day Leo was born, Grace showed up at the hospital with a onesie that said Plan B in big block letters. Vanessa snapped a photo and posted it online with the caption, "Guess you don't always plan for success." Hazel cried in the bathroom for half an hour that day. Grace swore it was just a joke, but she never apologized. That was 5 years ago, and I still think about it. On the third morning, I walked to the gas station down the road just to get some air. That's where I ran into Sheriff Ron Harlan, an old family friend who'd known me since I was a kid. He asked how long we were staying, and when I told him about 2 weeks, he just nodded. Then he mentioned something about how tornado season was starting to heat up. "Weather's been acting up lately," he said, "but nothing too wild yet." I remember thinking how normal it all felt at that moment. I had no clue that in less than 2 weeks, this town would be ripped apart, and that same family who treated us like dirt would do something I could never forgive. Like the morning of May 17th, 2013, 3 days before everything in Moore would change forever. I was sitting at Grace's kitchen table scrolling through emails on my phone when I saw the subject line that made my stomach drop. Urgent. Deployment blocker. Need you ASAP. Our company had been preparing a massive software rollout for a major client. If it failed, the contract, and possibly a good chunk of my job, could be on the line. I'd been confident I could handle everything remotely, but this wasn't something that could wait. My manager wanted me in Denver by that evening. I stepped outside to make the call. Hazel followed, squinting into the morning sun. Is it bad? She asked. Yeah, I admitted. They need me back for a couple of days. I'll leave tonight and be back by Monday evening at the latest. She looked disappointed, but not surprised. Do what you need to. We'll be fine here, she said. She always said that, even when I knew she didn't fully believe it. I checked the weather on my phone before deciding. It showed scattered thunderstorms and a slight chance of severe weather, but nothing unusual for Oklahoma in May. I asked Hazel if she wanted to come with me, but she shook her head. Leo's finally warming up to your mom a little, and Ava's been playing with him more. We'll stick it out. All right, I said. I'll leave a few things just in case. That afternoon, I scribbled down a list of emergency numbers on the fridge. Sheriff Ron's direct line, the nearest storm shelter address, and a family friend's number across town. I also charged a backup power bank and left it in the kitchen drawer. It felt unnecessary, but it made me feel better. Austin came in from the garage as I was packing my laptop bag. He leaned against the doorframe with that smirk I've hated since we were kids. Heading back to your big city castle already? Just for 2 days, I said. Work emergency. He nodded, then changed the subject in a way that wasn't really a change. Mom mentioned you send her $300 a month. He let the sentence hang, waiting. Yeah, I said. That's what we agreed on. Doesn't go far, you know. I cover her groceries, bills, yard work. Wouldn't kill you to step it up a bit. I bit back the first thing that came to mind. I'll think about it, I said flatly. There was no point in arguing. He didn't care about the money. He just wanted to remind me that he was the one taking care of Grace while I was off making money. Vanessa walked in just in time to throw another jab. Hazel, you don't really cook, do you? I mean, real food, not that quinoa stuff. She laughed like she told a joke, but Hazel's smile didn't reach her eyes. I cook, Hazel said calmly. I just don't cook the same way you do. Vanessa leaned closer. That's probably why Leo's so picky. Kids need to be raised with some discipline and structure. I was gripping my laptop bag tighter than I realized. Hazel gave me a small shake of the head, her silent way of telling me not to engage. I let it go, even though every part of me wanted to say something. That night, I booked the earliest flight out of Will Rogers Airport in Oklahoma City. Hazel drove me there in the old SUV Grace let us borrow. Leo was quiet in the back seat, staring out the window. I turned around and promised him I'd be back in 2 days. Be good for Mom, all right? Okay, he whispered. Can you come back faster? I smiled, though it hurt. I'll try. At the airport, Hazel walked me to the security line. I'll call you if anything happens, she said. Text me updates. Every few hours if you can. I will. And don't stress. We'll be fine. I believed her because I needed to. We hugged, and I kissed Leo on the top of his head before walking through the gate. I remember turning back once more and seeing them wave. Hazel looked steady and calm, the way she always did when things felt uncertain. The flight was quiet. I landed in Denver around 9 p.m. and went straight to the office. The next 48 hours were a blur of late nights and problem solving. Every time I checked the weather, it still said the same thing. Scattered storms, maybe a watch or two, nothing I hadn't seen a dozen times before. On May 18th, Hazel texted me a picture of Leo and Ava playing with blocks. On May 19th, she said Grace had made Sunday lunch and things were fine. That night, I finished the last of the deployment fixes and started browsing return flights for Monday morning. I couldn't wait to get back. What I didn't know was that while I was packing my laptop bag to go home, the conditions over central Oklahoma were changing faster than anyone expected. And in just 24 hours, everything I thought was fine would become a nightmare. May 20th, 2013, 1:10 p.m. I wasn't in Moore when it happened. I was still in Denver, finishing the last pieces of a deployment and planning to fly back that night. Everything I'm about to tell you is what Hazel told me later. Some of it over the phone in broken sentences, some of it in the hospital waiting room days later, and some of it months after when she could finally talk about it without shaking. She said the first tornado siren cut through the afternoon like a scream. It wasn't the usual warning, the kind that people in Oklahoma shrug off. This one was long, sharp, and terrifying. Leo ran into the kitchen holding his stuffed dinosaur, eyes wide. Mom, is it a big one? He'd asked. I'm not sure, she told him, but we're going to be ready. She started grabbing whatever she could. Leo's medicine, water bottles, snacks, IDs. She yelled for everyone to get into the bathroom or a closet. The TV was already showing the worst-case scenario, an EF5 tornado heading straight for Moore. And while she was panicking, Austin and Vanessa were in the garage loading their truck. Hazel told me she thought they were preparing to evacuate too, until she saw what they were packing. The big flat-screen TV, Vanessa's designer bags, boxes of clothes, even Grace's antique china set. Are you serious? She yelled at them. We have to leave now. This is a confirmed EF5. Austin didn't even look at her. Calm down, he said. It's Oklahoma. Warnings happen all the time. This isn't just a warning, she shouted. It's coming straight for us. We are going, Vanessa said, slamming the tailgate. We're taking what matters. Hazel told me that was the moment she realized they weren't scared. They were selfish. They weren't rushing to safety. They were prioritizing their junk over their family. What matters is my son, Hazel said. What matters is your nephew. You can buy another TV. Vanessa rolled her eyes. You city people panic over everything. That TV cost $2,000. These bags are worth more than your whole wardrobe. Leo was clinging to Hazel's leg, crying. Mommy, I'm scared, he said. Hazel promised him they'd be safe. Then she turned back to Austin. There's space in the truck. Please, just let us come with you, she begged. There's no space, Austin said flatly. We've got the safe, Mom's stuff, Ava's car seat. I can hold Leo on my lap, Hazel said. We don't need seats. Vanessa scoffed. Ava needs her space. She'll scream the whole time if she's crammed in there. And we're not dealing with that. Hazel said it was like talking to a wall. Every argument she made was dismissed like she was overreacting. You're seriously choosing comfort over a 5-year-old's safety? She asked. Ava's younger, Vanessa said. She comes first. Even Grace spoke up then, from the doorway. Hazel, you're making this harder than it needs to be. The house has been through storms before. You'll be fine. Fine? Hazel shouted. You're leaving us in the path of an EF5. Austin slammed the tailgate closed. We'll come back in an hour. Roads will be clear by then. An hour? Hazel said. There won't be a house in an hour. Neighbors were already peeling out of their driveways. Across the street, Maggie Lang was yelling for her kids to get in the car. Hazel said she saw Laura Jimenez's storm-chasing truck barrel past with cameras rolling. The siren screamed again, louder, longer. Hazel tried one more time. Austin, please. I don't care where we sit. I don't care if I'm on the floor. Don't leave us here. Austin wouldn't look at her. I said we'll be back. Stop acting helpless. Vanessa muttered, This is why people shouldn't marry outsiders. They don't know how to handle anything. Hazel turned to Grace, the woman who had once held Leo as a newborn, and said, If you leave now, you're leaving your grandson to die. Grace didn't flinch. You'll be fine, she said again, and turned away. Leo started crying harder as they climbed into the truck. Grandma, wait! Please don't leave me! They didn't even look back. Austin rolled the window down just long enough to yell, We'll see you soon. Don't do anything stupid, before speeding off down the street. Hazel told me she stood there frozen for a second, holding Leo, watching the taillights disappear. The wind had shifted by then, carrying that low, angry roar you only hear before a tornado. The sky was a sick green color. She ran inside and grabbed the cordless phone. 911, busy. She tried again. Still nothing. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely type, but she managed to send me a text. They left us. It was the last message I got from her for almost 12 hours. When she told me this part of the story, she cried. And I don't mean the quiet kind of crying. I mean the kind that breaks something in you. She said it wasn't just fear. It was betrayal. The people who were supposed to love her and protect Leo had driven away without a second thought. And as the wind picked up and the sirens wailed louder, Hazel realized that she and our son were completely alone. 2:45 p.m. After they drove off, Hazel grabbed Leo and went straight to the hallway closet. It was the most interior spot in the house. No windows, 3 walls between them and the outside. She dragged a mattress off the spare bed and shoved it into the space, stacking couch cushions against the sides. Leo was crying, holding his stuffed dinosaur so tight his knuckles turned white. Breathe, sweetheart, she told him. We're going to be okay. The sirens were still blaring when the power went out. The house fell into a heavy silence. No fridge hum, no AC, just the distant growl of something getting closer. Hazel kept refreshing her phone for updates, but the signal had already gone dead. 3:10 p.m. The sound started like thunder, then grew into something else entirely. Deep, mechanical, almost like a freight train. The walls began to shake. Leo screamed and Hazel wrapped herself around him, pressing him down under the mattress. Then the house exploded. That's how she described it. Exploded. The roof tore off first, splinters of wood and insulation raining down. The closet door blew open, slamming into the wall. Windows shattered somewhere down the hall. Wind roared through the house so violently Hazel could barely hear Leo's cries. Stay down! She shouted over the noise. She used her body as a shield, taking the hits from falling debris and flying drywall. 3:18 p.m. When the worst of the initial hit passed, Hazel realized the house wasn't stable. Two walls were gone. Part of the ceiling was hanging loose. The rain was coming in sideways now, soaking everything. The water heater had been ripped out of the wall and was lying in the hallway. "We have to get higher," she told Leo. The flood risk was growing, and the wind was shifting. If the rest of the house collapsed, they'd be trapped. She boosted him up through a jagged hole in the ceiling into what was left of the attic. It wasn't really an attic anymore, just a mess of beams and insulation open to the sky. Hazel crawled up after him, using a broken shelf as a ladder. 3:30 p.m. The tornado kept ripping through the neighborhood. The attic floor sagged, part of the roof tore away, and Hazel crawled toward a half-collapsed wall that opened to the outside. She and Leo climbed onto what was left of the roof, sharp, slanted, and dangerous. She found a torn tarp in the gutter, wrapped it around Leo, taped it in place, and tied them together. "Hold on to me," she told him. "Whatever happens, don't let go." Meanwhile, 600 miles away in Denver, I saw the alert. Catastrophic EF5 tornado hits more. I called Hazel, no answer. I called Grace, Austin, nothing. Sheriff Ron said emergency services were overwhelmed. Then evidence surfaced. Dashcam footage showed Austin's truck leaving the driveway 28 minutes before the tornado hit, loaded with a TV and boxes. Another video from a gas station showed them laughing as Vanessa said, "She needs to learn her place." And Austin replied, "They'll be scared for a couple hours, then we'll swing back." I watched those clips over and over, each time feeling sicker than before. 4:15 p.m. The storm finally moved east. Hazel and Leo were still on the roof, clinging to a section of plywood. The house was barely standing. The neighborhood looked unrecognizable. Cars flipped, power poles snapped, trees stripped bare. She said it felt like being on another planet. Leo wasn't talking anymore. His lips had turned pale. His little body was shaking uncontrollably. Hazel pressed him against her chest and tried to keep him warm, but her own hands were too numb to feel anything. They were shredded, deep cuts from wood splinters and torn metal flashing. Hours passed. She yelled for help until her voice was gone. And then, when the sun started to set, she saw lights moving through the debris. Volunteers in bright jackets, climbing over piles of rubble. 6:42 p.m. One of them, a firefighter from Norman, spotted them waving from what was left of the roof. "We've got survivors!" he shouted. They carried Leo down first, wrapping him in thermal blankets and rushing him to an ambulance. Hazel followed, her legs barely working. They told her Leo's body temperature was dangerously low, hypothermia. I got the call from a local volunteer around 7:30 that night. All he said was, "Your wife and son are alive. They're on the way to OU Medical." It was the first breath I'd taken in hours. But it wasn't relief, not yet, because alive wasn't the same as safe. And deep down, I already knew this wasn't over. I landed in Oklahoma before dawn on May 21st, 2013. I hadn't slept or eaten. The only thing that mattered was Hazel and Leo were alive and heading to OU Medical Center. When I reached the pediatric ICU and saw Leo through the glass, my heart nearly stopped. He was pale, lips still blue, lying under a mess of tubes and wires. A heart monitor beeped softly, while warm fluids dripped into his IV. His chest moved so faintly, I thought it wasn't moving at all. Hazel sat beside him, still in the clothes she'd worn on the roof, hands bandaged and eyes hollow. She didn't say a word when she saw me, just stood and held on tight, like letting go would break us. Dr. Sloan Reeves, the pediatric trauma specialist, stepped in. "Your son is stable," he said, but it was close. His body temperature was 88.2 degrees Fahrenheit, severe hypothermia. Another hour, and the outcome might have been very different. I nodded, but the words didn't really land. I just stared at Leo's little hands resting on the sheets. They looked too still. "We're warming him slowly," Dr. Reeves continued. "We don't want to shock his system. There's a risk of complications, arrhythmia, organ damage, neurological issues, but so far, we're not seeing signs of permanent damage. He's a strong kid." Hazel finally spoke, her voice hoarse. "He wasn't responding on the roof. I thought I lost him." Dr. Reeves rested a hand on her shoulder. "You saved his life. You kept him above the water. You got him to the roof. Without that, we wouldn't be here." Later that morning, Sheriff Ron Harlan came by the hospital. He looked exhausted. I'm sure he'd been working nonstop since the tornado hit, but he was direct. "I talked to Austin and Vanessa," he said. "Their story doesn't add up. They're telling people they tried to come back, but the roads were blocked. But according to multiple witnesses, They left at least 30 minutes before the worst of it hit. They had time. He took out his notebook. Also, a neighbor, Maggie Lang, turned over video from her doorbell cam. It shows the argument in the driveway clear as day. Storm chaser Laura Jimenez has dash cam footage of them driving off with a truck full of stuff. Timestamp proves they left early. And then there's the gas station video. A customer at the Valero caught them on camera after they left, laughing and talking about how Hazel and Leo needed to be scared. Full audio. I clenched my fists so tight, I felt my nails cut into my palms. Hazel sat quietly, staring at the floor. Elias, Ron said carefully, you've got enough here to press charges if you want to. It's not just negligence, it's reckless endangerment. Child endangerment, too. Hazel looked up at me then, and I'll never forget her eyes. Tired, broken, but still full of fight. Please, she said. I already planned to, I answered. That afternoon, Hazel told me everything she hadn't said over the phone, every detail of what happened after they left. She described the way Vanessa laughed while loading handbags into the truck, the way Grace said, "You'll be fine," and turned away, the way Leo begged his grandmother not to leave him. She told me about the house ripping apart, about crawling into the attic, about duct taping a tarp to her body so Leo wouldn't blow away, about watching his lips turn blue and thinking she was holding her dead son in her arms. I didn't interrupt, didn't. I just listened, because every word needed to be said, and remembered. When she was done, I stepped out into the hallway and made a call to Harper Quinn, a lawyer I'd worked with once in Denver. I explained what happened, what evidence we had, and what the sheriff had told us. Harper didn't hesitate. That's enough for a civil suit, she said, and possibly criminal charges if the DA wants to pursue them. Start sending me everything. The videos, the police report, hospital records. We'll build the case. The next few days were a blur. Hazel was treated for deep lacerations on both hands. She needed several stitches and had to take antibiotics to prevent infection. She barely left Leo's side. I didn't either. Leo's recovery was slow, but steady. By the end of the week, he was breathing on his own and starting to wake up more often. But the trauma was there. Even half awake, he'd flinch at loud noises. Once, when an alarm beeped on a monitor, he started crying and mumbling, "Don't leave me." Hazel had to climb into the bed and hold him until he calmed down. We didn't talk much about Austin, Vanessa, or Grace during those first days. Every time their names came up, Hazel's body would tense. I didn't blame her. I felt the same. The anger sat in my chest like a weight, heavy and cold. But I knew it wasn't enough to just be angry. We had to make them answer for what they did. And as Leo's heartbeat steadied and the color returned to his cheeks, I made a promise to myself, and to him, that they would. They had left my wife and son to die, and I was going to make sure the law treated it exactly that way. It was February 2014, almost 9 months after the tornado, when the lawsuit finally reached court. By then, Leo was physically recovered, but storms still terrified him. He clung to Hazel whenever thunder rolled. Nights were still hard. He'd wake up crying, asking if Grandma would leave him again. Hazel was in therapy too, but the nightmares hadn't fully stopped. Grace, Austin, and Vanessa's lives had changed too. Austin's shop lost clients. Vanessa was fired from her job, and Grace barely left the house. Neighbors ignored them, and people they'd known for decades turned their backs. But despite all that, not one of them ever apologized. 2 months before trial, Sheriff Ron set up a mediation meeting. Hazel and I walked in and found them already seated. Grace started. "I didn't know it'd be that bad. I thought the house would hold." "You thought?" I said. "You left a 5-year-old in the path of an EF5 because you thought it'd be fine?" Austin shifted. "We panicked. We were going to come back." "Stop!" I cut him off. "I heard the audio. You laughed. You said they needed to be scared." "It was a stupid thing to say," he muttered. "Stressed? My son almost died. My wife had to smash through a ceiling to save him." Vanessa folded her arms. "I protected my daughter. That's what any mother would do. I don't regret that." Hazel finally spoke. "You left my son to die. You watched us beg and still drove away." None of them answered. I stood. "See you in court." The trial began on February 3rd. The courthouse was packed with reporters and locals. Grace looked like she'd aged a decade. Austin kept his eyes on the table. Vanessa sat stiff, pretending not to care. Our lawyer, Harper Quinn, opened by saying, "This isn't about a natural disaster. It's about choices, to belittle, humiliate, and abandon, choices that almost killed a 5-year-old boy." Then the evidence started. Maggie Lang's doorbell footage showed Hazel begging them not to leave. Austin said, "We'll circle back." Vanessa walked by carrying handbags. Then Laura Jimenez's dash cam footage played. Silent, but devastating. The camera panned across Austin's truck pulling out of the driveway at 2:32 p.m., bed stacked with a flat-screen TV, boxes, designer bags. The timestamp was key. They left 28 minutes before the tornado touched down. Plenty of time to evacuate. Plenty of time to come back. But the worst was the gas station video. Grainy, security-style footage from the Valero on 4th Street. Austin and Vanessa standing by their truck, loading more items, windows down, both smiling. Then the audio kicked in. Crystal clear. Vanessa's voice. She needs to learn her place. Maybe this'll do it. Austin, laughing. They'll be scared for a couple hours, then we'll swing back. The courtroom went dead silent. Sheriff Ron testified that evacuation routes stayed open for 45 minutes. They had time, he said. They just didn't go back. Dr. Sloan Reeves described Leo's hypothermia and how close he came to dying. 2 more hours, he said, and we'd likely be talking about a funeral. The Hazel's testimony was the hardest. She described the roof tearing off, the attic, taping a tarp around Leo, and holding him as his body went limp. When Harper asked what Leo said afterward, she whispered, "He asked if Grandma didn't love him anymore." Jurors wiped their eyes. The defense tried to minimize everything. Austin said he panicked. Grace claimed she trusted the house. Vanessa said she did what any mother would do. None of them apologized. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. The verdict: Austin and Vanessa were guilty of reckless endangerment, child endangerment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Grace was guilty of reckless endangerment. They were ordered to pay fines, complete 250 hours of community service. The judge specifically mandated disaster relief work, given what they'd done, and stay away from Hazel and Leo for 3 years. When the judge read the verdict, I didn't feel triumph, just relief. For months, we'd carried anger and betrayal with us. The ruling didn't erase what happened, but it proved it mattered. It wasn't just family drama, it was wrong, and now it was recognized as such. We walked out of that courtroom hand in hand. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but I barely noticed. For the first time since that day in May, it felt like we had taken something back. Not revenge, not closure, but the certainty that what they did would never be forgotten or dismissed. Oh, and I stopped sending Grace that $300 a month the day I landed in Oklahoma. Austin could cover her bills now. I was done paying into a family that tried to kill mine. It's been a little over 2 years since the trial ended, and life looks very different now. We're still in Denver, still in the same little house with the maple tree out front, but the people inside that house, especially Leo, aren't the same as they were before that tornado. He's 7 now. He's in 2nd grade, obsessed with dinosaurs and space, and can read anything you put in front of him. But the storm still lives in him, even if he doesn't talk about it much. When the weather sirens go off for tests on the first Wednesday of the month, he freezes, just for a second, then goes right back to whatever he's doing. Progress, his therapist calls it. Small, steady progress. Hazel still has nightmares sometimes. I do too. But we've built something stable, something safe. And even though we don't talk about May 20th, 2013 every day, it's always there. A quiet shadow behind everything we do. Then one afternoon, a number from Oklahoma popped up on my phone. It was Dr. Halverson, Grace's doctor. His voice was gentle. "Elias, I think you should know. Your mother doesn't have much time. The cancer's spread to her liver and bones. Weeks, maybe a couple of months. She's asked if she can see you, and Leo, one last time." I just sat there, staring at the wall. Part of me wanted to hang up and never think about it again. Another part of me, the part that had been a son once, knew I couldn't ignore it. That night, I told Hazel. She was quiet for a long time. "Do you want to go?" she asked. Technically, the restraining order was still in effect. We had about 6 months left on it. But I wasn't about to let a piece of paper stop my son from saying goodbye if he chose to. I'd deal with the legal fallout if it came to that. It never did. "I think I need to," I said. "Not for her. For Leo." Hazel's eyes were wet when she finally answered. "I can't go. I'm not ready to see her. Not after everything." "I understand," I said. And I did. I would never ask her to carry that weight again. We booked flights the next day. Leo was quiet when I told him where we were going. "Are we going to Grandma's house?" he asked. "No," I said. "She's in a hospital now. She's sick. She wants to see us." He looked down at his hands. "Does she still not like me?" The question hit harder than I expected. "I think she wants to tell you she's sorry," I said. "And maybe you can tell her how you feel, too." A week later, we walked into a hospice room in Moore. Grace was barely recognizable. Her hair was completely white, her face thin and pale. When she saw us, tears started rolling down her cheeks. "Leo," she whispered, voice trembling. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Leo stayed behind my leg, holding on tight. I knelt down next to him. It's okay, buddy. You can say what you want to say. He took a few small steps forward, still clutching my hand. Do you love me? He asked quietly. Or did you only love Ava? Grace broke then. She sobbed, clutching at the sheets. I love you. I always loved you. I was selfish and cruel, and I will regret that until the day I die. Leo stared at her for a long time. Then, in a voice that didn't sound like a little kid's anymore, he said, You did something really bad. But I don't want you to go while I'm mad at you. I forgive you. I don't think I've ever seen anyone cry the way she did after that. She asked to hold his hand, and he let her. We stayed for about 20 minutes. Leo told her about school, about the dinosaur book he was reading. When we left, she whispered, Thank you, over and over again. She passed away 2 weeks later. Hazel didn't come to the funeral, and I didn't expect her to. Leo and I stood a little apart from the crowd. It was a small service. Most of the town hadn't spoken to her in years. When it was over, I was about to leave when Austin walked up. He looked different, thinner, older, tired in a way I recognized. Elias, he said quietly, I'm not here to make excuses. I know I ruined everything. But the kids are cousins. They're innocent. Do you think maybe Leo and Ava could see each other sometime? I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I'll think about it, I told him. And I meant it. When we got back home, Hazel and I talked about it. She was hesitant, understandably, but eventually we agreed. If it ever happened, it would be on our terms. Supervised, safe, no more surprises. Life moved forward after that. The lawsuits faded into old news. People stopped asking questions. And slowly, we learned how to live with the scars instead of trying to hide them. A few months later, I was watching Leo play in the yard when the city tested the tornado sirens. That sound still makes my stomach tighten. I looked over at him, ready to comfort him if he froze. And he did, just for a moment. He stopped, looked up at the sky, then went back to kicking his soccer ball like nothing had happened. That's when it hit me. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean trust magically returns or that the pain disappears. It means choosing not to let the worst parts of your past control the rest of your life. Maybe someday Leo and Ava will meet again. Maybe they'll build a new kind of bond. Maybe they won't. I'm okay either way, as long as my son knows this one truth. The truth I wish I'd learned sooner. Family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the ones who stay when the sky turns black. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.